Hello, everyone. We are live yet again. This is one of my authors' chats of the week. And as I let this platform go and send notifications out, I'll just keep an eye out for my co-host and we'll get things going. And hopefully just a few minutes, we'll be talking about books, writing, publishing, and everything in between. And today, actually, in about 30 seconds, will be my first full week of my current Kickstarter, which is very exciting for me. And we reached funding, and we are now on route to try to, stretch for that stretch goal, at least the first one. We'll see how it goes. But I always love when a campaign finally hits that initial funding, because that means now everybody is guaranteed the rewards they want, which is all good. So I'm excited about that. And like I said, we'll see how the campaign continues to progress over the next few weeks. But like I said, today, blah, blah, blah words. Today is one of my authors' chats. So I'm just going to keep my eye out to see if my co-host is here. Aha, I see. Okay, send the invite and see if she sees that, and we'll get things rocking and rolling. Hello. I just sent you the invite. Let's see if you saw that. Invite. Maybe not. Crossing fingers. Sometimes, I think last time I had a little bit of a glitch, but it always happens. I always hope for the best, but you plan for the worst. Hello?
Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I do not see you outside of your logo, but I do hear you. And it always starts off this way. What? Do not ask me how to flip it around, but there should be a way.
There is. Give me a second. I have not joined a live before, so I am.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember, but since I sent you an invite, I don't know if it'll show up on mine, but I know there is a way because this always happens, and one day I will learn what it takes on your end so then I can advise. Hi!
Hey!
How are you?
I am wonderful. How are you doing?
I am wonderful as well. I'm glad to see this went fairly smoothly. I've had a couple of these where it just took forever to try to get everything coordinated, and I wish I was better at being techie, but I am not.
I feel like I'm pretty good at this sort of stuff, and then the second something pops up, I'm like, no, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yep. every time. But I don't know if you've listened to any of my author chats before, it's pretty conversational. If people come in and, ask a bookish question, I'll try to acknowledge them. I think how it works, I've always tried to figure this out. I think how it works is depending on the viewer and how they entered the live and if they're following one or both of us, I may not see all those questions. So if you see anything and I'm not touching on it, feel free to point it out, because I would hate for someone to be like, I've asked a question and I'm sorry.
But I will definitely keep a look down on the bottom.
Perfect. And outside of that, I will let you start off by introducing yourself and what you write, and we'll just go from there.
Hi, I'm E.A. Williams, and I write urban fantasy mostly, but I do kind of touch on all sorts of fantasy. I just put out a short story with Monroe Wildrose in one of her anthologies for cozy fantasy, and I have another cozy fantasy with her coming up. And I did dip my toes in not too long ago with sci-fi with a short story anthology. But I like to kind of stick to urban fantasy.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was gonna say cozy fantasy I would think, because cozy is just a general term for a lot of, you can apply it to a lot of genres and subgenres too. So I could almost see a cozy urban fantasy. I've not read one yet, but I'm sure they're out there.
Oh, I have a recommendation for you then.
Okay.
There's a great cozy urban fantasy called Strange Practice. Okay. And it is it feels like half like Sherlock Holmes, half Dracula, and it's great.
I love that. So what got you into writing urban fantasy? I'm assuming you read it and you were a fan, but what made you decide that's the genre you wanted to start writing?
So I live in Texas, and I live in a big city in Houston, and it's like a very weird place. But everybody is like, oh, Houston's so boring. And I'm like, if you were here, you would understand how weird it is all the time. And it just always kind of feels like if you turn down the wrong street, you could like end up in like a completely different world. So I kind of like the idea of like, if you walk into the wrong store and say the right thing, you're going to meet a witch at any moment. And I loved that. I love that when I see like portal fantasies and when I see urban fantasy. So I just really was like, I'm going to rep my city with my series, Line of Tepish. And I was like, that's where I wanted to go with it.
So is it based in Houston area, or where do you,
Yeah.
say? That's kind of fun. Well, I guess, are there specific places that you like to go that you put in the book, or and if so, did you veil them with like different names, or are they true to form? That's always an interesting question when people write about the real world, but it's our world, but it's kind of not.
I wrote, if you're from Houston or if you've spent any time there, you'll be like, oh, I know exactly what she's talking about. In the first book, there's like a moment where they're talking about this like corner, and it's like literally it's the only place in Houston where there's a Starbucks on one side of the street, a Starbucks on the other side of the street, and there's also a Barnes and Noble. So there's a Starbucks in there, and so you're just like, this is too many Starbucks. But it's been there for like years, and yeah. If you're from Houston, they're like that. I know exactly the street she's talking about. I've been down that corner, and you've been to at least one of those Starbucks.
I wonder if there is any deviation with the offerings within. That would be kind of funny if you're like, this is the right side of the street, and this is the left side of the street.
It's like left and right twigs. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what I was wondering. But no, that's really neat. I love that. And so what kind of fantasy elements did you use in your urban fantasy? Because there were so many people can incorporate. So what were some of the ones that you did?
I really wanted to play up the idea that like the magical community has to keep a secret. And so a lot of the focus of magic tends to be on glamour and like keeping things under wraps, because they are like, it's a small minority community. So you want to keep like as under the radar as you possibly can. So that affects my magical creatures. It affects my like magical users. And I love a slow build. So we started out with the vampires and sort of like, oh, well, there is one witch and like magic's a part of it. And then like it kind of like builds and builds. And the third book really, which is coming out in July, is really sort of jumps headfirst into, this is how magic works. This is a really big deal that's been going on under the scenes that I've been sort of like foreshadowing and like dropping hints about for 2 books now, and I exploded it, and my editor just looked at me and was just like, I don't know if I'm proud of you or disappointed.
Well, I think that's, if you even watch like I guess technically urban fantasy or in shows, they usually have the focus thing, whatever the entity is or whatever it is that brings you into, there is more than. And I've been on a kick for a while, kind of watching all it went from like the tweeny vampire stuff to some of the more adult ones, but started watching all those shows, and again, vampires, and then they're like, oh, but there's a witch. Oh, but there's a werewolf. Oh, but there's this. Oh, there's also these things, and they all keep expanding the
they did that in particularly like what is that? I'm gonna like Vampire Diaries. They did it with Vampire Diaries, and they did it with like Legacy, but they also did it with True Blood.
Yeah, and that's the other one I was watching. I was like, just went through all.
Oh my gosh, and I have a love-hate relationship with True Blood because I love watching it, and I loved the books, but like at some point I'm like, if he says Sookie one more time, I'm gonna die.
Yeah, yes, I agree on that particular one. I agree. But yeah, no, so I totally understand. And when you're reading, even in kind of the high fantasy side of things, you're not necessarily, you can, but you're not always going to be thrust into everything at once. Usually you have to at least give a few chapters to breathe before you're like, oh, but there's a lot more out there.
Yeah, there's like, there's like an art to sort of like just like trickling in the world experience, like the magical
Mhm.
world. I love when I read a high fantasy that like just like is masterful, like just like, oh, there's this thing outside and it's slightly different than here, but they just sort of talk around it. And I tried to take my cues from a lot of high
Mhm.
fantasy about the way that they talk around how strange it would be for us coming in from like a modern world and kind of going on
Mhm.
like, oh, that totally works here. I understand it, rather than being like, okay, this is this thing. Like this is the tower of whatever, and it lives outside and it's sentient and it does this, and you're like, okay, I'm so confused.
Too much information right away. Yes, there is an art
Yeah.
form, how to kind of present the world. And you can still incorporate everything you want in, but sometimes there's that the way you want to lead the reader into, your world system and everything. So for your books, how many main characters do you follow, and how many POV characters, and who are they? Let's break
I
it down.
I have my answer, and then my editor has a different answer.
Okay.
Because I really like, if I'm reading high fantasy, I want to know everything that's happening. And if I'm reading urban fantasy, I'm okay only having like knowing one or two characters' point of views. But I kind of took my love for that sort of like multi POV, very close third person, and I put it in my urban fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
So there's really, like, I would say there's like main character, there's really just Emma and Vlad. And then my editor would be like, if you change POV one more time. And uh, I really sort of narrowed it down a lot over the course of editing, because it used to be like every time a new person showed up, I was like, and we have to know what's happening with them.
Mm-hmm.
But writer's journey, you get much smaller. But really, I have an ensemble cast that I kind of viewed it in the writing process of like, I'm building a world and these characters populate it and these are the circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And so for now we're following this plot, and the plan is for 4 books is to be following Emma's story and what she's going through and how she's going to overcome the challenges she's faced with. But there are these other characters who are very important. There's her best friend. There's like the witch character who comes in. There's her. There's Vlad. There's her love interest. There's like mysterious other vampires, because we must have more than one.
Oh, yeah.
If you have one hot vampire, you must have 10. I think it's just a rule. But I do enjoy getting a POV of like, every once in a while you kind of get that idea of like, this is what's happening with the villains, and you
Mm-hmm.
kind of get to give them motivation in a really personal way, rather than just like, well, I've deduced this from all the interactions with them. And then you like step back and you're like, oh god, I really do hate them, even though they're humans. Like it just kind of like gives the story a little bit more oomph to me.
Mm-hmm.
My editor, again, she's just like, if you write one more POV, I yeah, she's hilarious about it. She's like, Annie, don't don't take this chapter out. I wrote one that was a POV of my one of my villains. My villain is, as a whole, a cult
Mm-hmm.
that my main character is trying to escape, and I wrote a POV of one of the cult members, and she was like, we don't need to know this. And I was like, but we do. We need to know this very much. She was like, no, just put it away. So,
Hey, you keep that
mhm.
extra chapter, because you never know if you could always do a special release with the bonus missing chapter, or a giveaway with some of your fans and be like, guess what? The first whatever, you could use it. You could put it in
Oh
your
yeah,
newsletter. I mean, there's so many things you could do with that. So don't lose it. Lose it.
I have like an entire folder that could at this point it's probably just like another book that's just like, this is chapters that my editor told me I couldn't keep anymore.
But I mean, that's a good editor. If
Oh yeah.
yeah, I was gonna say I don't know who you work with, but being able to tell someone, hey, we're not just tweaking this word or something. We're, I know they're different type of editors, but like we need to remove this because it's bogging down the story, or it's extraneous, or you need to rewrite it a different way. Not to say the stuff can't be in there, but it may just have to be approached differently. I mean, that's what you really want, because you want your story to come out as the best it can be. And even if you were like my first book, it was like pulling teeth because I had to like totally rewrite the first chapter or so just so I could speed up the thing, because I was too slow to introduce everything. And I heard it from multiple people and I was like, no. And finally I was like, okay, if everybody's saying this, I guess I have to rewrite this before I publish it.
I have found that the greatest hurdle I have to get over is with editing is like my own, like, no, you have to know this information. And then it's like my editor, who's also a very good friend of mine, she's like, you don't. I promise you, you don't. And like that relationship with your editor, and it becomes like, it's almost like a book therapist. That you get to a point where you're like, yeah, I know pacing's a problem for me. Please fix it.
Yeah. And again, it's you are developing over time or you should be developing over time, like you said, a relationship with the people who are helping you, be it the cover designers or the editors or whoever you're working with. And it does sometimes take a little time for both of you to get comfortable to sometimes say what you need to say or counter argue, because as an author, especially if you're indie, you have that choice to say, no, I'm going to stand firm, and that's okay too. You have to just figure that out yourself, what you're going to accept at face value and what you're going to be like, no, but this is why. Let's argue.
Yeah.
In the nicest way.
It's like, I always think of it as like I have an older sister, and my editor feels very much like an older sister to me. Like, she's like, we're going to have this conversation and I need you to like get your like coffee or whatever, but we have to talk about chapter 7 and like whatever's going on with it. And I have been really lucky to very quickly find an editor that I click like that with. But I think like as far as the process of writing, that's been such an important step, to find somebody you can like have an open dialogue with about like what's working, what's not, what's important, what isn't. Especially with fantasy, when you're like, but like, it's really important that you know that the reason why this magic works is because this thing happened 7,000 years ago. And you're just like, actually, maybe that's like a novella somewhere later down the line.
Yeah. And that's I don't know. I was listening to one of these authors on here was talking kind of about that fact is how much of this background history you want it to feel alive, and you want to make sure you have history. And as an author, we know a lot more than we usually put into the book. But how much does the reader need to know versus you kind of just giving the implications needed for the story to progress at a pace and get things going, and not to say, like you said, it could be a short story or a novella if you really want to deep dive in some of the back history, but doesn't necessarily have to be in the book to that extent.
Yeah.
But let me also ask, how many books do you have out now? You said this was supposed to be a 4-book series. Are they all available now? Are you still working your way through? And where are you?
So I have the first 2 books are out. The 3rd book comes out in July. And then I am in currently three anthologies. So if you are not ready to deep dive into vampires and Houston and sort of, I had somebody call it a spaghetti western with vampires once, and I sort of loved that. I wasn't going for that vibe, but I'll take it. But I have the short stories are in Monroe Wildwood has 2 anthologies out, and I'm in both of those. And then I am in Mixed Bag of Tricks, which is I'm in a writers group called the Armadillo Author Society, and we decide we're all from Texas, or most of us are from Texas, and we were like, we're gonna be kitschy. We love it. Like,
great.
We just leaned in, and we had this idea to torture ourselves and give each other prompts outside of our genre just to see if we could do it. And then we were like, actually, these are pretty good. Like, you wanna And so we have the that anthology out too.
I love that. Yeah, anthologies is something that I want to get involved in being part of because they're great ways for authors to cross promote and then hopefully reach new readers. And they're also really good ways for a reader if you don't know if you are ready to invest in a whole book. Then maybe the first book of the series of someone, if you read that author or writer in an anthology, you can get a kind of a flavor of how they write. And then that kind of may help you figure out who you want to invest in, because I get it. Getting books, buying books is an investment. And it could be investment anytime if you're a library person, but like it's still an investment. So it's a good thing.
Oh yeah. As a reader, I love them because it feels like you get like a juicy little like it feels like a good snack. Like you can read a chapter and then be like, oh, I finished the story. Like amazing. And then from a writing perspective, I feel like after every big project, I need a little like palate cleanser to like take a breath. And that's such a great place to do it when you're like, okay, I can finish a project and feel that like satisfaction and keep the creative juices flowing. And then be like, all right, well, like, here's this thing. What do I do with it?
That's great. But no, it is really good. And also it's nice to challenge yourself for different things. Short stories, especially for an author, if you're trying something new, maybe you want to do that versus dedicate yourself to however many 1,000-word novel. But a short story may be something. And that's kind of what I've done. I did one that I wrote a short story. So that's something that I give out to my newsletter readers and some other people. But it was someone termed it a rural fantasy because it's not in an urban setting, but it's in a rural setting. And it was my first time kind of dabbling with, let me write a character that's on our world, supposedly. That's very rare for me. Another one I did was first time I wrote in first person. I'm a third person writer. I don't think I'll ever do that again, but I tried it out. I gave it a good college try.
It's such a good place to do that. I wrote a short story. It's in Grimoire of Honey Spells that has a shifter in it. Mm-hmm. And I'd never even considered writing a shifter character before. And I was like, okay, I'll do it for this because that's sort of what the vibe of the story is. And I was like, all right, it's not too bad. Like, it's like getting in the kiddie pool of a genre and being like, okay, like, all right, I like this. All right, I could go in the deep end maybe. And then you're like, ooh, too deep. Like, come back.
Sorry, my mind jumped into a really weird visual where I know you said kiddie pool, but we were just talking about shifters, and I just thought of a pool with kittens. Kiddie pool. And I was just like,
oh, I love that.
Well then. I'm sorry. Where my mind jumps sometimes. But no, that's...
I love, like, who doesn't love a kitten, though? It's the internet. Everybody loves kittens. So I'm okay with that.
But yeah, no, that's kind of fun that, you got to experience trying something new through a shorter work. So going forward, because you said you have 3 anthologies under your belt, 2, you're kind of halfway through, almost 3/4 of the way through your first series. Yeah. What are your next plans beyond this series, or have you kind of even had a chance to think about that?
I'm so terrible. I like plot out all of my books. I'm a plotter at my soul. I want to be a pantser. I want to be that person who can be like, oh yeah, let's start it and get to finish. But I'm that person who's like, okay, here's where it starts. And I will like start out with like, I really like the idea of writing a character who fixes motorcycles. And then it'll be like, I'm just going to jot that down in my little like story file that's like story ideas. And then 20 minutes later, I'll have half of it plotted out. And it's just like, so I just have a folder on my computer that's story ideas that are like, I woke up at 3 a.m. from a dream that was like, you know what? Bees. And then I am awake for an hour just plotting out a story idea. But I have next on my docket, I have a book that's like probably halfway through a major edit. That's a psychological thriller with a little bit of a spooky twist to it. And then I have this one that I'm still very much in the plotting process of, that is sort of YA Stranger Things meets Die Hard by way of like John Hughes movie kind
Fun.
of vibes.
That's
So
fun.
I'm kind of working on a million different things and also just working on one thing
Hey,
somehow.
I know how that feels. I never feel like I'm working on just one thing. I does feel like I'm doing multiple things all the time because I am, again, don't necessarily advise it, especially to new writers, but that's
Right.
what I do. So I don't, I totally get the whole thing about juggling ideas and various projects at various stages of planning and everything. Actually, going back to the idea that you have your little I love the armadillo vision, but you have your little writing group and talking about how you were kind of giving each other different prompts. Again, here's another one of those random little ideas. Have you ever seen those kind of randomizers on your computer where you put all different things on there? All you plug in a prompt, put a randomizer, and then let it just draw like three out there, and then you have to write a short story of put the
I
three
love
together.
this. Why are we not doing this on Book Talk? Like, just get a bunch of like all of us, all different genres, just like, and okay, where is there's spaghetti in this? I don't understand.
You never know. And it would be fun to see how many people rise to the challenge and write, a little short story that incorporates whatever they get.
Oh yeah. I love a prompt. I love
Mhm.
taking a minute and just like playing with it. Um and a lot of the people when we were doing Mixed Bag of Tricks, they were just like absolutely like just like deer in the headlights with prompts.
Mhm.
They're like, I don't know what to do with this. And I was like, this is my favorite thing ever. Like, I'll write 6 short stories. I don't know what you're talking about. I started writing shorts for other people's prompts because everybody shared what prompts we were giving out. And I like, one of my good writer friends got one that was for a spooky bachelorette party.
Ooh.
And it was like, bachelorette party summons a demon. And I was like, that's brilliant. That's the funniest thing I've ever heard. I think that this is a horror comedy. And she is a brilliant humorist. And so she was like talking to me the whole time. She was like, I can't write scary anything. She can't even watch like Goosebumps. She's just a scaredy cat.
Oh
And I
no.
was like,
Make it a comedy.
I I was like, absolutely, write a comedy. So she wrote this very satiristic, and it's in Mixed Bag of Tricks, but it's literally one of the funniest things I've ever read. And it's about bachelorette parties in Austin, which I don't know anyone who's ever been to Austin at on 6th Street. There is always a bachelorette party going
Mhm.
on. It could be a Wednesday afternoon, and you'll see a party bus with bachelorettes on it that are
Mhm.
just like 3 sheets to the wind, and it's just the vibe of that street, which is very famously the party street in Austin. And I was like,
Yeah, yeah.
this is the best thing ever. I'm gonna need you to write 6 more. Yeah.
Continue this, please. You discovered something. I love that. I absolutely love that. So actually, that's I was gonna say, prompts are something that is, I think, extremely beneficial for so many authors. Now, not everybody functions that way. Clearly, as you kind of discovered with your group of writers, that sometimes people kind of, as you said, deer in the headlights, just don't know what
Yeah.
to do with it. I like challenging myself for different things. So I know also there's that whole muscle memory for anything you're working with. So challenging myself to like, here's something odd, here's something, it gets easier and you start, figuring out, and your brain starts kind of working a little better on how to put the little odd prompts together to create some kind of story. So that is always a neat thing. But let me ask you the dreaded question. Dun, dun, dun. How do you like to reach and connect with readers? And this could be like platforms like this or face to face, but how do you find works for you to discover a readership? Wow, that was really sorry.
I have I have the way that like as like a like bulk way. I can sort of like view it as like I do a lot of in-person events, and
Mm-hmm.
I really love I like to talk to my readers one-on-one. I like to talk to potential readers one-on-one, even if you're just stopping by because you like my sign, or you saw like I have like little stickers that I put all over my booth. Like you liked a sticker and you wanted to pick up one of those. There's something about just talking to other people who like reading that I really enjoy, and I often find that even if you don't read urban fantasy, there's something like human in fantasy that is like, even if your characters are orcs or goblins, there's like this really, this is sounds so cheesy, fantastical way of connecting like really deep and emotional stories in this like, oh, I don't have to like really touch on like how much this reminds me of this horrible thing that happened to me, but I can like view it through the lens of fantasy. And some people have not discovered that yet. So when you get to talk to them one-on-one or in person, you get to like say like, oh, well, what kind of movies do you like? Tell like, oh, you like Gilmore Girls. Okay, well, I love to write really pithy characters who are constantly like bantering with each other. Mm-hmm. So you'd probably really like my characters Buchanan and Fields, because they're very much like they do that all the time. And people like pick it up and be like, oh, I didn't know you could do that in fantasy. And mm-hmm. so it gives you a chance to like open people up to a new genre or a new experience. And I love to see that. But when you're talking about like reaching readers beyond just like the like maybe 100 people that you might meet at an mm-hmm. event, I really do like TikTok. I think that it gives people a chance to like, especially like your question of the day that you do. I see, like, I love it when I pick up my TikTok and you like question of the day and I like think about it for like all day. I'm like, what is my favorite action scene that I've ever read? Like, and then, which my answer to that, by the way, which I kind of hate, is the Twilight scene in Eclipse. Like that moment where they're like fighting and then it's like, oh, but actually it was all a vision. And I'm like, damn it, it was actually kind of good. Like, and I hate that I like it, but also like, it was kind of good. Like,
oh yeah, I get it.
So I like that TikTok gives us the opportunity to like, oh, you can see the author's face, you can see the books that they're mm-hmm. writing, you get a feel for their personality, which so often comes out in their writing, and it's so much fun to be able to do that.
Oh yeah. And I do see a couple comments coming in. One was a couple for you saying pithy is perfection, 100%. So like that is another one. Thank you. I'm glad you like my questions of the day. I did see one earlier, though. I think we moved on from the point, so I'm trying to remember where this comment came up in our little conversation, but it said, likely purely for promotional reasons, or do you like to delve into their imaginations? I think this is referring to you talking to people face to face at events.
I like to have like a real conversation with readers who come through. A lot, like, luckily book events tend to be a little bit slower paced than if you were like, I have been to like concerts where you get to meet the band and you're like, here, mm-hmm. sign the picture, leave, or sign a CD or whatever. That's mm-hmm. aging me. Actually, no CDs. I've never seen a CD. I don't know what you're talking about.
But it's back to vinyls now, so you know.
I literally I bought a bunch of vinyls at a thrift store not too long ago, and they were like, oh, have you ever heard of this band? And I was like, you mean the Rumors album by Fleetwood Mac? Yeah, I've heard of it. I was like, I had a moment and I was like, oh my God, you're so old. But I do really like to have, because of the slower pace, I get to have a real conversation with someone and get to ask them about like what is the thing that you're looking for in a book? What's that thing that like gives you the connection? And I love to get recommendations from the readers who are stopping and be like, okay, if you stopped because you just liked my sign, what was it about that? Like, what book did you read that like brought you here? And I often end up like have like a notepad that's like books that I'm going to buy after I leave the thing where I'm selling books. And and I love that sort of like delving into their imagination and like getting that connection. And I think that that's the best kind of place for it. To say, I see that you're asking about my readership. I do not write YA. I always say it's like it's a little over PG-13. Probably if you have ever watched the show Supernatural, that's the age range that's like acceptable to read what I'm writing.
Yeah, so it kind of falls into, I guess, what you would qualify almost new adult. It's not necessarily catering for the younger side of the teens, but you still can get some, older teen readers and the college age, and the new adults as yeah. I definitely have series that fall into that age bracket. My first series actually kind of does that too. So, but yeah, I found out. I've been starting to do the conventions in my area since I'm outside of Atlanta, and so Atlanta brings a lot of events. I'm sure Houston does the same for you because it's another big city. Yeah. So it's nice to be able to go to them and talk to people face to face. Of course, my thing is I can talk. I can talk all day, but not everybody wants to be, grab their attention. So it's always that kind of thing is I will almost sit back at events until they come to me because I don't want to be the person be like, hey, come to me. You want a book? It's like that creepy person. Do you want a piece of candy? I'm like, no, I know that. Do you come to me? So I always do hope that, something on my booth will catch their eye and they can come over and be like, oh yeah, you like that? That's a replica Viking helmet. Let's talk about Vikings. I actually read a Viking series and we'll go from there. Stuff like that.
I saw that you wrote a Viking series and I was like, oh, add to cart. I didn't need to hear anymore. I was like, I saw Loki in the thing. I was like, we're good. Oh, Thor is also that. Yes, please and thank you. I always love to find out like what's the like. I'm gonna ask you a question now. What's your like thing that you read that you're like, okay, if it says this thing in the description, I'm gonna like buy it. I don't even have to read the rest of their blurb. What's the go-to auto buy?
Oh, okay. Well, I'm a weirdo. My go-tos in general are ancient epics and sagas. I like any kind of the source material of myths. So that I always love. If there's something that I don't already own, I will definitely get that. But as far as a little more concurrent stuff, I'm always a sucker for a dragon, but that doesn't necessarily mean a sale for me either. There's a lot of that out there. I think right now would still be retellings based off myth. So if it doesn't have to be necessarily Nordic, it could be Greek, it could be Roman, but if it's like, this is a retelling of this mythological thing, so Circe in Song of Achilles and The Witch's Heart, or anything that's a retelling, like, yes, take my money.
I absolutely feel that way. I get really excited for like Eastern European myths. Mm-hmm. If they're like Baba Yaga, I'm like, add to cart, we're done. Like I don't even have to read anything. And I'm seeing that somebody's answering that coming of age stories. Oh my gosh. I feel like there's like a part of me that still like wants another Buffy, like coming of age of like the high school, like the way that I am waiting for Stranger Things season to come out. Like, I love that vibe too. So if you can add like mystical creatures coming of age, like, and just a little bit of like spooky, I'm there. I don't need anything else.
I love that. Yeah, no, my YA series is the Isekai Portal Fantasy, but because it starts with the younger side of YA and they age up, it's definitely a coming of age aspect because go through. There's this stereotypical stuff, the first loves and the crushes and all that kind of stuff, all the teen stuff because they're teens. Yet, the big picture is there's a lot of stuff going on and there's a lot of big bads in this multiverse and all the quests, and it's a lot of fun. But yeah, definitely when you have the spooky things integrated, and I do love when I read fantasy, anything that's kind of eerie. So one of my villains is a lich, so a resurrected necromancer. I mean, why not?
I like it. So I really love it when somebody will take something that's supposed to be really spooky and they're just like, no, this is a very normal part of this fantasy world's life. The book I was talking about, Strange Practices, the main character is a doctor for monsters. So she just has like all of these like monster characters that come in and out of her life that you're just like, those are totally normal to her. That's not the problem that's happening in the book. It's like 60 other things that seem pretty like the like at one point she's like there's like a serial killer that's existing and I was like that's the problem. The fact that you're treating a demon for COPD, nothing. Like not the issue. And I love it when a book takes that and they're like this thing that would be very weird if you were dealing with it, not weird, but like this normal thing that exists in real life, very strange. I love it when it turns it on its head.
I do. I was gonna say that's the things about I think a lot of retellings, going back to them in a lot of folklore and fairy tale, and you see that a lot, where you take something that you know and you twist it around in a totally new way. And it's always entertaining because you're like, okay, what's the twist? Where are we going here? What are we going to do with that? Yeah, I see a comment also saying about fairy genres and in the folklore and stuff like that. And those are very popular. I think they will always be popular. I do believe the trends of the it entity, a creature, character change, but they go back and forth. Like fairies, they're always going to be popular. Some years, especially with the ACOTAR series, they were very, very, very popular. They're still pretty popular. Dragons are rising right now thanks to Fourth Wing and stuff like this. So there's always going to be that. Vampires will come. Something will trigger into everybody. They're those iconic creatures that we all go back to. I love that.
And I kind of love that, like, there's like, it's all kind of cyclical, but it's almost like when dragons are popular, vampires are usually pretty popular too. And when fairies are popular, it's like zombies are popular. It's a very strange, like, it's, I like to look at the trends, which is probably like the nerdy little like marketing side of my author brain, which is like looking at the trends of like when these like certain genres are popular. But I love, because I write vampires and I read vampires so much, we're looking at like this like upward tick of it. And I was like, oh look, dragons are back too. Look at that. And I'm like, ooh, it's fun to watch. Or if you're a nerd like me.
It's true. No, I used to live in New Orleans for years and years, and so some of the subcultures obviously are very vampire forward and witch forward and voodoo and stuff like that. And so I do remember a time where I had some friends visiting, and I was like, "What are your interests?" And someone's like, "Vampires." I was like, "Okay, I got you. I'll show you some of the quirky aspects here." I mean, obviously, we all know, or most of us know Interview with the Vampire and all that. But I was like, let me show you some of the stuff in this quirky little city we have here. But let me ask you, because the hour is going to start speeding on by, and there's always stuff I try to cover in the off chance. Well, two reasons. One, for anybody listening, but two, in the off chance that this is a nice platform and I can repurpose this on my YouTube channel later. And I'll put all your contact information down below. But where can people find and follow you outside of Book Talk? As in, do you have a newsletter? Do you have a website, other socials, that kind of thing?
I have a website, which is eawilliamsbooks.com. And you can sign up for my newsletter there. My newsletter is pretty lax. I literally use it for news. So it's like, oh, I have a new book coming out. Here's my info. I'm trying to get better about that. Not super great. And then you can follow me at EA Williams Books on Instagram.
Nice.
As well. I used to have a Twitter, but I don't use it ever. And I'm also EA Williams Books on Facebook, which you can, and Threads as well, which mostly it's just Instagram posts that get reposted to Facebook.
Hey, reposting that's one of my specialities. That's one thing I love to do, because here's the thing, you're definitely have people who are on one platform and not the other. Then you'll have the fans that are following you everywhere, and I love you. I appreciate all those fans, and readers and everything. But just because you want to reach everybody and they're not necessarily going to see all your stuff, and the algorithms may not always show the same people the same things, repurpose. Save some time. Yeah. Get back to writing. See where you can read the next book. Let's make this streamlined. But I do love that. Also, where can people get your book? Are you exclusive through Zon? Are you wide? Do you sell direct? That kind of thing.
I am wide. I do. You can buy off of my website, but I find it's just easier for everybody to get them. I am available. E-copies are available at Barnes and Noble. You can request like you can go in and request them to get a hard copy. But I haven't found Barnes and Noble so great about like carrying like paperbacks anymore from indie authors. But if you bookshop.org, if you're on Kobo, if you are on the Zon, it's available everywhere. So
Nice.
yeah.
Yeah, I've started the process of moving as much of my stuff wide as possible because I was originally exclusive through Zon, and then I went to open my own shop. So when I was pulling down the ebooks and some of my audio and of course the physical stuff, so I can do that. And now, as of this year, most of my ebooks, all my ebooks, most of my audiobooks are wide. I haven't done the jump physical stuff because it's
a lot of work,
and it's a lot of work, and there's always something
so
else
many
I feel
books.
like that's more essential than that at this point in time.
I carry I have the Kindle app on my phone, and I literally have like 10 books with me at any given time. So on my phone. So I'm like, this feels like the way that a lot of people are reading. Or maybe that's just me, that I'm just like, I have to have a book with me at all times.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like ebooks going wide is like, it's so accessible, and it's like a great place to start.
Oh yeah, and there are some platforms like I use Drafty Digital, so on the writing side of things, that easily will help you distribute to a whole bunch of things, and it's really user friendly. There are others that are Ingram Sparks, that some people use that too for the ebooks. I do see a question coming up of what is the meaning of wide? Wide is essentially mean it's a short for saying widely distributed. So you're not necessarily going through one place. A lot of people go or are exclusive through Amazon because if you sign those contracts, they give you a higher percentage of royalties usually, and a lot of those are pretty good for readers. If you're going to be in Kindle Unlimited, you have to have your book only there, nowhere else. But they do have a decent payout, and depending on your genre, that could be the bulk of your income coming through that. So there is a reason why a lot of people will just stay with Amazon. But when you hear the word wide, it means they're at multiple places, if not all places, including Amazon, but all the places. And so hopefully that explains that. But yes,
I think I did a great job.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I was going to say, I like the fact that taking it wide, I'm now able to be in libraries too, because there are definitely people who, let's be real, the economy, that can't afford to have all the books they want. And if you're not in KU, where can you be easily found, especially for someone who may not have a lot of money to throw at libraries? If they have so many options out there, you can go through a huge number of ebooks and even audiobooks and stuff like that online. So it's pretty cool.
I cannot tell you, like, the Houston Library is got so many amazing things. It's not just books. Like I'm gonna soapbox here, talk about libraries are amazing. Don't just go there for books, go there for all the things. Get your Libby app, go get your library card if you don't have it. It's such a great place. And it's one of the few third spaces where it's not work, it's not home, and you can go there and just not be expected to pay a million. We can go to coffee shops and buy a $12 coffee, or we can go to dinner or a bar, but going to a library, you can just okay, I'm not expected to talk to anyone. In fact, I'm actively encouraged to be my introverted self here and just open a book and just sit quietly, and everyone else here wants to do the same thing. It's just really can't say enough good things about libraries.
Yeah. And a lot of them have interesting programming. I don't know, depending on the library, and authors can come in sometimes and talk about the books and everything. You never know. You gotta check out. So yes, I am a big advocate saying, hey, check it out. You never know until you try. You might be sold on it if you've not done it so far. So I do like that. Also, let me ask, since I don't think I asked it this way, was what formats are your first two books available, and even your anthologies? What formats are they? So paperback, hardcover, audio, ebook.
I have paperback and ebook. I haven't dipped my toes into audiobooks yet. I really want to do audiobook, but I just keep like getting a little shy from. I'm like, oh, I'll try it. I'll send out a thing to voice actors, and then I'm like, oh no, I'm not gonna.
Yep.
So I haven't done that yet. I have a friend who just got theirs out, Pat Daly, who writes YA sci-fi, and he was like, I'll give you their information. They were great. They were phenomenal. I'm like, oh, I have to talk to a new person? No.
That is true. That is true. Now there's routes where you don't necessarily have to talk word for word. You can just do it through emails. You don't have to necessarily talk on the phone. But yes, you need to make those connections if you want to do that. And audiobooks can be again, I'll use one of my go-to words. They can be phenomenal. There are so many people who that is their format. They don't do anything physical or virtual because or ebooks because it's either hard for them to actually physically see. They may be ADHD and it's hard for them to kind of sit down and focus on words, dyslexic, or just don't have a lot of time in the day, and driving to and from work may be the only time. So you can reach a whole new group of readers. On the other side, they can get very pricey. So two sides to the coin.
I unfortunately have the habit of writing really long books. Well, I say unfortunately. I have never had a complaint of anybody. I'm like, it's too long. But I always get to the point where I'm like, oh, this is a lot of words.
So many words. I love words.
So many words.
But no, I can say I like a good thick book.
I always think it's funny because a lot of the people that that are in my writing community, they don't write in fantasy. Mm-hmm. So when they're talking about word count, they're talking about much lower. They're talking about in the 60,000, 70,000. And I'm like, if I am under 100,000 words, I feel like I haven't finished my story. And then they are always like, Annie, it's okay. You can go off and be in your little fantasy realm. It's okay.
No, hey, especially when you're an indie author, the freedom we have to not be restrained by a certain size count, which depending on your age bracket and genre, and if you're going traditional, they can limit you on your parameters. But as indie, you can do what you want, and there is that neat ability to find the length for your story. And I definitely have my full lengths that are, well over 100,000 words, and then I have my novellas that are, the smaller size, and dabbling now with short stories, which again for me is I don't know if I could ever go smaller than that to the flash fiction. How do you do that?
Every time I read a good flash fiction, and I'm just like, I love a horror flash fiction, and I'll read it and I'll be like, I'm terrified why this was a paragraph. What happened here? How did you condense?
That's a challenge, and one I don't know if I want to attempt. But I do see a comment that popped up a little while ago, noting that certain libraries will allow authors to even have book signings there. So that may be another venue for people if you've never checked out that. I honestly haven't checked out my local library for that purpose.
I haven't talked to mine about a book signing. I should. That's a good idea. Yeah.
And I also see a comment saying, I write fantasy and word count issue is real. Yeah, I was going to say, there's definitely some people with expectations depending on your genre. If you say epic fantasy, they want a lot of words. Yeah. When you're saying YA, because it's young adult, they usually expect it to be on the shorter side. They do have a tighter bracket. And so my YA series is definitely long for YA. But there's so much that goes on. I could not figure out how to just cut out a third of the story to make it fit into the traditional YA word count.
I think YA it gives you so much free range that the idea of there being a word count cap or something is just strange to me. And maybe that's because I'm indie and I have been I get to choose and I get to make these choices. And I'm all right, if I want a 200,000 word book, I can absolutely do it if I want to. I'm not sure if I could, because that's a commitment. But I like the freedom that being an indie gives you. Kind of like you get used to it, and you're like the idea of like having someone else come in and be like, you can't write more than 85,000. I'd be like,
yeah, and all methods are good. For certain people, you will find the one for you. There's no one right way to publish. I am definitely on I like to control and hyper monitor everything. So being indie makes a lot of sense to me. Would I be open to having some of my books be in some kind of traditional fashion? Sure. I think I would be bulking half the time because I'm so used to being able to do, the way I do it. And that would be a learning curve for me.
So technically, I'm a hybrid author because my short stories have been through small presses.
Yeah.
And when we did Mixed Bag of Tricks, there was a cap on how many words we could write just because of printing costs.
Yes.
And I bumped up against that, and I was like, every time I was like rewriting it, I'd be like, I am 1,000 words over, and had to find in that story like where to trim 1,000 words. And I will say that like having that parameter really made me stretch like my writing skills, just to be like, okay, well, we have to really trim this down into just the muscle of the story. And it really, I changed my like idea of like word count pretty considerably. And I end up using like the third book is a little bit shorter than what I thought it was going to be. Cause I always think of series, and maybe this is just like me reading a lot of like epic fantasy when I was younger, that like every book gets a little bit bigger. And then my third book got a little bit smaller, and I was like, oh, I wrote that short story in between these two books. And that like changed how I edited this book and to like take it down. It's an interesting process.
It is. And I know when I wrote, and I promise I have a couple comments that I've been waiting, but I know when I was working on my first story, again, I was a little too wordy because I needed to trim up a lot of stuff. One, for flow, but as I got a little better at my own self-editing process, I did realize, though not necessarily easily visually, you can't really tell if you just look at the spines, but each book progressively got shorter a little bit in my first series because I was fine-tuning my craft of writing and getting a little more efficient with the storytelling. So they did kind of get a little thinner each time for that first series. I did see a comment down here saying, I write new adult and they're asking to be under 100,000 words. Yep. Yeah. See, that is a tough thing. And it's that, those word count limits, it's a challenge, and who knows? Is there a right or wrong of it? I don't know. I'm sure there is some methodology of why they choose that in traditional publishing. But yeah, I like that freedom.
I believe in you. I think you could get it down under 100,000 words. I'm rooting for you, Roman.
So let me also ask you, is there anything, since we're kind of near the end of the hour, and for anybody who's listening, you can chime in as well. Is there any questions you wanted to ask that you haven't had a chance to ask, or topics you wanted to cover that you haven't had a chance to cover yet?
I wanted to ask you why you started the Portal Fantasy. What made you want to write this, like your new one that's up on the Kickstarter? Because that's...
So
I haven't done a Kickstarter before. This is like scary and new.
Yeah. Well, this is my third one. This is my third one for the same series, and so the reason why I chose to write this young adult portal fantasy, it falls into a bunch of categories: epic fantasy, high fantasy, novel bright. It goes on and on. But that's a series that actually, the idea of it made me want to be a writer ever since I was a kid, because my childhood alter ego is the main character. My sister's kind of childhood alter ego got changed a little bit, but it's one of the characters. And this is pretty much the multiverse, didn't know the word at the time, but the multiverse we developed during our imaginary play as children. And when I got older, I wanted to share those stories with people. So I started telling everybody I was going to be an author one day. And, everybody's like, yeah, whatever. It just so happened that I wrote a totally different series first. But there was a reason for that, because I wanted to, again, figure out my writing voice, figure out the process, because I didn't want to jump into my passion project right away and fail. I would break my heart.
Yeah.
So I had another series I wrote first, and now I'm kind of still releasing this young adult series. So the 5th book has that Kickstarter that is out now for the next few weeks. And yes, my alter ego shines through. My version of myself I wish I could be.
I love that. That's so exciting.
It is. It's fun. But that's the fun thing about authors. We can do whatever we want, as long as we explain it in a way that readers find believable. And I'll put it in air quotes because, again, fantasy, but believable.
There's like there's like an element like you have to give it just enough like reality, and that's the fine tuning that every author gets, that like how much edge, how close can we get, and that's kind of fun too. I am excited to jump into your new book.
Yay!
Yeah.
Yeah, for anybody who is interested, Kickstarter is out for the next few weeks. You can find mine through the link in my bio, and that's really my only big news, because I don't have any events until the fall, well, late summer, I should say. How about you? Is there any particular event or anything that people can see you face-to-face that you have planned?
I don't have any face-to-face coming up like soon. In September, I'll be at Armadillo Con, which is in Austin. If anyone is there, lots of armadillos. I am from Texas. I saw one this morning. So, but it is like a sci-fi fantasy writers and other media convention, and highly recommend. It's been going on this will be 48 years this time. It's a phenomenal event, and a lot of really amazing chances to like meet authors and speak with them face to face. And then in July 12th, the 3rd book comes out, and the pre-order will be up pretty soon. I'm pretty excited. I am driving myself crazy trying to get everything like formatted and ready to go, and doing like the millionth proofread on it. Yep. And somehow still there will be a comma or a misspelling. Of course.
And you're always going to discover it right after you order all your author's copies.
Right? Or it'll like my like my nightmare is like there'll be like a Goodreads thing, which I've stopped reading my reviews because I grew up, but like there'll be one and be like, I loved this book, but like this comma was out of place or this word was misspelled, and I'm like, oh, no, I'm terrible. I'm like, okay, breathe. You're a human being. You make a mistake.
Yes. And again, one of the perks of going indie is that you can always go behind the scenes and edit. And then in a matter of, X amount of time, it really doesn't take long-ish. It depends on how many platforms you have to go in. But
yeah.
And then it'll be edited. It'll be gone.
Yeah.
And, that's the only thing is when you see, if you go trad and there's an error, because they happen both ways, you don't necessarily have the power to be like, can you come back and just change that?
Fix it. Yeah.
You might. Maybe you do. But I was going to say, a lot of people just don't, and they just roll with it. But it's going to happen. It always is.
Yeah. It's always going to happen.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say I'm definitely at that point of the editing process of the book, because when I release World of the Worm, so when I'm running my Kickstarter for, it'll be, probably, I don't know if I'm gonna release it. I may be releasing it in maybe late July, maybe. We might both be July babies. Yes! I have to take a breath and just verify before I promise anything. Worst case, August. So I'm looking at those 2 months, and I'm like, which one do I want to do it? How crazy!
I get so excited for a book release, and I'm like, oh, I can do it. I always like assume I can do it like a month before I actually can, and so at least for the first 2 books, I was like, no, I can do it here, and then like I'm like about like 2 months out, I'm like, oh no, I'm gonna need another month for XYZ. Mm-hmm. Usually it's proofreading. I'm like, no, it doesn't take that long to get your books in, to get your like author copies, your proofreads, and then it like takes a full week, and I'm like, oh, I didn't have that week. I'm like, why am I surprised by the time that it takes to ship things? Yes. Always.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I'm never good about putting my books on pre-order, because I'm always scared that I'll miss that date that I promised. And
Yeah.
it doesn't matter how far back it just weirds me out. Now, should I take advantage of it? Probably. I'm kind of, that's there's where my confidence dwindles is pre-orders. I'm just like, I'm also really bad about promoting them, so.
I'm like mediocre at promoting any kind of pre-order. I'm like, I will tell people that it exists. You'll get like 3 posts that are like, this exists, you can do it. And then it'll be like, okay, everything's fine. Like I'm just terrible with promoting pre-orders. Like it feels like what if something goes wrong? Like in between and I have to change it. And my brain is like catastrophizes.
Yeah. There's always something that we have to concern ourselves with, and some of them are valid. Others aren't necessarily as valid as we think they are. But it's running a business, and there's just so many factors for us to like monitor and check and make sure everything tries to go as smoothly as possible. So, I totally get it. But since we have reached the end of the hour, I do want to say, if you ever want to do another one of these chats, let me know. I do them weekly, do plan them in advance. But I would love to have you back on and chat maybe after you've released number 3 in July. And, that's so exciting. And, do something that way. But it's been so fun being able to talk to you and learn about your books, in your short stories, and you.
Yeah, and we should definitely do this after both of our books come out. I bet I believe in you. I can't wait to see it out in late July, early August.
We will see. We will see. I do have to like really focus on be like, okay, is this possible? Do I have enough time? But maybe. Who knows? Maybe. Yeah. But thank you for coming and hanging out, and for everybody else who's been chiming in. I'm very excited to be able to have hung out with all you this time. And until next time, everyone, I hope you have a lovely week. Bye.
Bye, all.